All right, you're injured. You want to know how long your personal injury case is going to take? Stick around in this video and I'll explain it all in detail and you'll get the answer. How long is it going to take? Let me start by saying this. It ain't fast. It's never going to be fast. On its best day, it's not fast if it's done right, and you want it done right. You want to go to an attorney who's a specialist in personal injury litigation and trial work, because those are the people who are going to get it done right for you. At Orlando & Associates, we do it right. Fast is not the answer. Detailed, deliberate, aggressive, thorough. That's the way you want a personal injury case handled. And that means sometimes you have to be patient with the process. So what is that process? Let's talk about it. It's largely dependent on what kind of case you have. There's all kinds of personal injuries. You can get a dog bite, hit by a car. You can slip and fall. You can be injured by a doctor's negligence. There's 1,000 different ways to get injured, and there's all different types of personal injury cases, and all of them are different. But no matter what kind of case you're handling, it's never going to be quick. If an attorney tells you they can resolve your case in a few weeks or a month, turn around and walk out of their office. That's not the attorney for you. They're not doing their diligence. It's not even possible to get medical records that fast most of the time. And that's the primary piece of evidence you need in a personal injury case. In fact, your medical treatment is probably not done in that period of time. And that is the utmost importance in your personal injury case, no matter what kind it is. So listen, you get hurt, it stinks. You might be out of work. You might be going to doctor's appointments. You might be laying on a couch or in bed, confined to your home, what have you. And it is terrible. And it's not going to be terrible for a short period of time. But if you do it right, if you follow a good attorney's advice and you allow them to do their job and to do it deliberately and thoroughly and aggressively and really maximize your recovery, you should be happy at the end. So let's talk about the different kinds of cases. The one that takes the longest, in my experience, is generally medical malpractice. Medical malpractice cases almost never settle without filing a lawsuit and litigating the whole thing. And that stinks because there's so many statutes, laws in place in Massachusetts that make the process take forever. And it really is sharply in favor of doctors and insurance companies, unfortunately. So let's talk about medical malpractice cases and what they look like. You're injured in a medical malpractice situation. Very often, that injury is not something that's immediately apparent. It could be something that comes way down the road. You name it. It could be a latent issue related to a surgery that was done years before. It could be an instrument that was left inside of you when they were doing surgery. It could be, a delayed diagnosis of an illness that you don't find out about until later. Just on that topic alone, you're talking months, if not years down the road from when something occurred. Once you figure it out and you start pursuing it, and you go to an attorney, that attorney goes through a series of different specialists to determine whether or not the theory of liability or fault is legitimate. Just because you get a bad result does not mean the doctor was negligent in their treatment of you or the nurse was negligent in their treatment of you. So there's a lot that goes into it pre-lawsuit to determine whether or not you have a viable, winnable personal injury medical malpractice case. Once you figure that out, which usually takes months, if not more, then you have to notify the defense. You have to give them 182 days to respond under General Law 231, Section 60L. You can't even file a lawsuit until you give them that opportunity to review your claim on paper, your notice and presentment letter, and give them the opportunity to respond. The kicker is, a lot of times, they don't do anything but send you a letter saying, we deny your allegations. Go ahead and file the lawsuit, because they know that 90% of medical malpractice cases that go to trial result in a defense verdict in Massachusetts, meaning the doctor or the defendant wins. So you've got to be real careful pre-lawsuit before you go headlong into a 3-4 year litigation. The next question is going to be which track you're on once you file a lawsuit in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, we have different tracks. We have fast track, which isn't fast, and we have average track, which are the most common, those two tracks. And that's not fast either. In fact, it's a lot slower. On the fast track, you're looking at 1.5 to 2 years from when you file the lawsuit until you go to trial. And that's if everything goes according to plan, which it almost never does. On the average track, you're looking for 2.5 to 3 years minimum from the date you file the lawsuit until the day you try the case. And that's if everything goes your way. So look, the average medical malpractice case from beginning to end, likely to take between 4 to 6 years in my experience as a litigator. And that's sad to say, but that is how it goes. Let's talk about a different kind of case. Car accidents. Much quicker than medical malpractice, but still not fast. The first and most important thing is you see through your medical treatment. You need to know what the scope and the extent of your damages are. Damages are your injuries, your medical bills, your time out of work, your lost wages, your general damages like physical and emotional pain and suffering, scarring, disfigurement, other things like that. You very often don't know the full extent of those damages until you see through your medical treatment, which could take months, if not years. Once you have a grip on that, you engage in a back and forth process with an insurer, usually to try to resolve the claim short of filing a lawsuit. Once you send a settlement proposal package or a demand package, which is basically your case on paper, you're looking at several months back and forth between you're able to negotiate a settlement usually. Then after that, if you can't and you're filing a lawsuit, you're into an average track case for 1.5 or 2 years, likely before the case resolves. So the average car accident case could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 or 3 years. Again, unfortunate, but if you're doing it right and you're maximizing your recovery and you're pursuing every avenue to make sure that happens, sometimes it takes longer than you want it to. Realistically, the same thing happens with a slip and fall case or a dog bite case. And I hate to say it, but the process on its best day is slow. It's not a great system, but it's the one we have. So if I had to sum it up quickly for you, how long is your case going to take to resolve? Not short. And because the system is not designed to move quickly, you have to be patient with your lawyer. You have to be patient with the process. You have to be patient with the fact that you're dealing with several different organizations of people that have to cooperate in order for you to just build a file, to get medical records and bills, to get video evidence, pictures, witness statements. You need investigators involved. You need third-party record holders to produce them to you. So very often they get stacked this high and they take them one by one. It's not a fast process. Police reports, you name it. It's not a fast process when you're dealing with government agencies trying to get records or medical facilities or trying to track down the whereabouts of witnesses and get them to cooperate with your investigation. It's not a fast process if it's done right. So please be patient with your attorney. I'll give you an example of how being patient can improve your case, improve the ability to make a better recovery. Very often, pre-filing the lawsuit, before you file a lawsuit, you try to negotiate a settlement with the insurance company representing the defendant. And oftentimes you're not able to do that. They're not willing to offer you the real value of the case. And that might mean you have to file a lawsuit and you have to expose them to the concept of a jury hitting them with a judgment that's bigger than they want to pay. That's the risk they have to take if they go to a jury. And sometimes it takes a while to get through that litigation process once you're in the court system. But very often these insurance companies will only offer you 50, 60 cents on the dollar of the value of your case pre-lawsuit. And if you're willing to see the case through, to go the distance, right up until trial or through it, you very well could be leveraging out the actual value of your case. So that extra year, 1.5 or 2 years could mean the difference of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Who knows, maybe even millions. And that very often occurs. I'll give you an example. Very recently, we had a dog bite case, a dog attack case, where a dog knocked over an elderly woman. She broke her hip. She had to have surgery, and she was otherwise independent before, but she ended up at a nursing home for what is going to be the rest of her life at 90+ years old. They robbed her of whatever little time she had left of independence because of this dog knocking her over and breaking her hip. And in Massachusetts, it's nearly automatic responsibility if a dog injures somebody on the dog owner or keeper. So the question really wasn't about who's responsible. We knew, everyone agreed. The question was the scope and the extent of damages. Before we filed that lawsuit, the offers were $100,000, $125,000, $150,000. After we filed the lawsuit, we were able to leverage $500,000 for our client. And even that wasn't probably full value. But we recognized that unfortunately our client probably didn't have long. And we wanted her to be able to enjoy the resolution, the money that she was going to get before she passed. All by filing a lawsuit and doing some basic discovery. A period of a few more months before we were able to leverage several $100,000 more out of the insurance company. That's a great example about how trusting the process, trusting your attorney, and being patient can benefit you greatly. There are a lot of factors that delay the procedure of a case in a way that is efficient. It's very difficult when you're working with two busy attorneys' offices, for instance. One attorney might be available on a date to take a deposition and another attorney might not. And then you're looking weeks, if not months down the calendar before you can agree on a date that both attorneys are available to take a party deposition or a witness deposition. You might have delays in the gathering of information. Very often with these large hospital systems, you request medical records from the date of the incident until the present. You send that off to their hospital. The hospital sends it off to a third-party medical record and bill provider. It sits in a pile. It might be 90, 120 days before you get that information. It's the primary evidence in a personal injury case. You need it. It's very difficult to proceed without it. That also delays cases. Sometimes insurance companies engage in delay tactics just to make a plaintiff more desperate, just to make a plaintiff who's been out of work for a long time and who's getting collection notices from credit card companies and medical billing and the like, to feel desperate for whatever money they're going to offer, just so the plaintiff will take less. There are 1,000 different ways cases can be delayed. The judges, very often in the superior court, they go from court to court. They don't stay in the same superior courtroom for more than 90 to 120 days before they rotate out. Sometimes they do, but very often they don't. And then a new judge is coming in and acclimating themselves to the case. There's a lot of different things that can delay a case. And the biggest one recently, since COVID and since the 7.5 month shutdown of jury trials, has been the backup in the jury trial system. Although they had 7.5 months of backed up trials because they didn't have jury trials during that time period, it's actually worse than that because there was a really significant act of retirement amongst a lot of the judges who were older and who wanted to get out of the system at that point. And the governor's office and the governor's council did not act quickly enough in replacing those judges in the state court system. So we had a huge backup of way more than 7 months, and they still, 4 or 5 years later, have not caught up with all the jury trials they need to catch up with. So as a result, if you have a jury trial date, you might be stacked up behind another trial that's an older case or a case that takes precedence over yours. And an example of that would be this. Personal injury cases usually take a back seat when it comes to a criminal jury trial. So if there's a criminal jury trial that's seeking to impanel in the same court as your personal injury trial, they're going to impanel the jury for the criminal case before they impanel the jury for the civil case. You might not even have jurors left after they get through that impanelment process. And the same goes for whether there's a judge available. If there's one judge in a courtroom and there's 3 trials scheduled, that judge is going to take the case that's older in time, or very often the more significant time constraint case. In that case, a criminal case should be the bigger time constraint. So there's a lot of things that delay cases. So many things that unfortunately almost every case gets delayed longer than it should. But if you're patient with the process and you're patient with your attorney and you go to the right attorney like us at Orlando & Associates, you will get an aggressive attorney who fights for you every day, even through all those delays, to make sure we maximize your recovery. So if you want the good, the bad, and the ugly of the personal injury industry, if you want to learn more, subscribe to our YouTube channel and come back and you'll learn more in all of our videos.